and welcome to the law. This is your legal lights. It's your help law. I'm Ladi Anyanini, and this afternoon we're privileged to host the president of the Ghana Bar Association, Yao Echampong Boafo. Many of you have asked questions about the Bar Association, including questions about its relevance today. We will be right back, and he will take the questions head on. You could send your questions also to us.
Rules for lawyers. The threefold duties of lawyers are duty to 1. The profession, including to preserve its dignity and honor of oneself and uphold the laws of Ghana. 2. The public, including not volunteering advice to bring a suit or instigate litigation or assist unauthorized practice of law. 3. The client, including not committing acts of fraud or dishonesty, breach of confidence, delays case, fails to defend client's interest, or in conflict or against client's interest. 4. The court, including not misleading or deceiving, discourtesy, improper dealings, failure to attend court, not withdrawing after discovering client's commission of illegality or gross irregularity, but which he is prohibited from disclosing.
Right, and that's for your segment, the Law 101. Here, it's your legal clinic, and our guest will briefly share his views on the fourfold duty of a lawyer. A duty to the court, to the client, to the public, and to the profession. And then from there, we'll zoom into how the GBA is doing well, how it is doing in some of these areas. Duty to the profession, to the court, to the public, and to the client, maybe to the public. Yao Echampong Boafo, thank you so very much for making time to join us this afternoon.
Thank you, Samson, for having me.
Right. So in this segment, we want our audience to leave with a certain education. There are people who are watching this show because they are inspired and want to become lawyers. There are people who are, clients, so to speak, of lawyers and want to know one thing or the other. And there are people who generally just want to know some bit of the law. That's an onerous duty, fourfold for a lawyer.
Samson, good afternoon once again. The first thing I'll tell people is that the practice of the law is not law and order or Boston legal or any law. One of the most important things for us is that our profession must be highly regulated amongst all professions. If a doctor commits an error, it ends up in a mortuary. When a lawyer does same, it creates living dead. So, we have to have that fourfold duty to protect our profession. Some of the rules are very arcane, some of them are very esoteric, but we need it. For example, touting, all these things, like, for example, why should you not be in a partnership with a non-lawyer? Why it's unethical for you to share your fees with the lawyers. Those touting
is advertisement of your services as a lawyer. It's prohibited. That's what you say. That's not good.
That's not good.
We need to relook at that.
Yes, a point. Because you see, I believe strongly that it's very important that professional colleagues are the ones, or clients who have accessed our services, are the ones who should recommend us. Because if I pay for an advert on JoyNews that I'm the greatest lawyer since Shawcross, it's very difficult for you to verify. My colleagues may see me as some dumb piece of wood, So these rules are very, very, very...
But it allows you to advertise in a legal magazine. For example, this show is a legal magazine,
absolutely.
So
you can't do those things, but of course, if you advertise a legal magazine, it presupposes that people who have knowledge of the law have vetted the content,
that's right,
websites and all those things. So we need them. And the public must understand that we need them.
And you mentioned that one too about the fact that you cannot collaborate with some other person or firm that is not a law firm to work, and you can share your fees, that kind of thing?
You know, because you see, if I'm instructed as a lawyer by a client, the presumption is that I have a skill that I can act in the interest of the client. You know, why should I collaborate with somebody with no knowledge or no skill, and the person starts putting pressure on me to do something that is unethical? What happens? And why should I share my fees with somebody who is not a lawyer? Why should I be in a partnership with somebody who's not a lawyer? When, I mean, the law allows you to have a law firm either as a registered partnership, limited liability company, or any of the modes of incorporation. So it's very, 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 very important.
Okay.
And I think I'll add that it's also important that we dress in medieval clothes. You know something?
We dress in medieval clothes, keep the wig on, and the gown in this tropical sun.
Let me tell you something.
In some courts that there are no air conditions.
Let me tell you something. One thing we forget is that in this country, because of the level of literacy, haven't you been in court and so many people walk to courtrooms looking for lawyers or looking for legal services? That's how primordial some of our assistance is. And you know, when you walk into a courtroom, registrars have suits and ties, court clerks, everybody. And you know the problems we have with impersonation and all the problems that we have with. Even now, you know, so it's very important that we are tied. But sometimes there's something spiritual about uniforms. You and I know very well that sitting today, fine, but immediately we start dressing when we go into court, when we put on the gown, when we put on the wig, we just have to have that presence that we are. There's an obligation on us. I think that's why most professions, I mean, doctors.
Those who introduce it are doing away with it, except for perhaps criminal, processes. I suppose that criminal trials. I think Georgina Wood, former Chief Justice, also sought to do so.
Something. And you know the problem of what Georgina Wood faced. You know what happened? Georgina Wood used the Judicial Council, and the directive was that it was supposed to be an experiment, and we should not wear the wigs. And I knew very well that thing would not go beyond Georgina Wood. Sophia Akufu comes, and that's the first thing. And the thing is that when Sophia Akufu brought it back, there was, let me see, majority of lawyers had it. And one of the problems that we also have to look at is, are we saying that newly qualified enrolled lawyers should have it only for call day and then discard it? No, we need it. And sometimes you see this.
I was at the bar conference in Sunyani where those of us who thought differently were outvoted.
My problem is that it also covers a multitude of sins. Because these days some lawyers tend to dress like traffic lights, and you see the gown covers a multitude of sins. And for me, this argument that those who introduced it, something, should we always have that argument? That would mean that when they change everything, when they ask us that those who introduce our laws are now saying that we should legalize homosexuality, then we start telling them we are Ghanaians, and that we still carry that inspiration of the illegality of.
But isn't what Georgina Wood sought to do good? That you do it only for the criminal, trials, because the criminal trials, you're going to convict somebody, a judge is going to convict somebody, they may go to jail, and they may have, hatred for the judge. There are people who may want to do bad things against a judge or the lawyers involved. But because you are in a wig, you are in a gown, it may disguise you a bit. So they may not accost you. They may not be able to make you out.
Something. I think that civil litigation is more emotional than criminal in Ghana. You and I know very well at times when we engage in certain cases, the clients see us as enemies. How many lawyers have not been insulted or by clients? How many of us have not been threatened because we're cross-examining? So if we've realized that there's a bit of disguise when we put on the wigs and gowns, then it actually should be across board. Because you and I know, like in this country, there's something called manslaughter. People actually litigate as if their lives depend on it. That's right. Emotional. So for me, if there is a need for in criminal law for there to be a disguise, in the Western world, you have highly educated individuals doing their commercial arbitration. The courtroom is even cleared of only litigants.
Security.
In this country, when you have a family land matter, on the day that they're coming to court, every person in the family shows up, and how many times don't we feel threatened in those matters? Yeah. So if there's a need for cover-up, then it should be available to every lawyer.
And if you're not careful, all sorts of items are found in front of your law office, some mashed items and some red things and some calico. Unfortunate. Please, if you have issues, it should be with the person, not with the lawyer. They are just doing their work. And
something, but let me just add something, just very important, some good news today. I hear that the law school, Ghana School of Law, has won the Internal Audit Agency Award for Best Internal Audit Unit in the MBA category.
That's right.
So congratulations to our brother.
I've read the notice from the Internal Audit Agency about that. Right. Okay, so now don't forget that your questions are welcome for the President of the Ghana Bar Association, Yao Boafo Echampong. Yao Echampong Boafo. And in Law 101, on our Law 101, if you forgot anything at all, particularly those of you who are clients to lawyers, don't forget that they are not supposed to commit acts of fraud or dishonesty or breach your confidence. The discussions you have with them is absolutely confidential. Unless you give them the permission, they can't go and tell somebody else. They also must make sure that they are attending to your case and they are protecting your interests. They cannot represent you and represent your opponent at the same time. That's conflict of interest. And all of these things, if they happen, you can make a report, lodge a report, and they will be punished. It's misconduct and they'll be punished. They can actually lose their license from practicing debarred, or is it, from practicing. Thank you. Now, in this fourfold duty to the court, to the client, to the public, and to the profession, many have looked at the GBA in these days as not having, fulfilled or doing its work well when it comes to its duty to the public. That the GBA, has been known to be sort of the vanguard of society. Unfortunately, it seems these days to find its voice to, among other things, demand good and accountable governance only when the NDC is in power. What do you say to that?
Something, I made this statement on another show and I'll repeat it, that you don't read the book of Lamentations in the time of Hebrews. For me, activism must be as dynamic as society becomes dynamic. The activism of a revolution, of a military government, should not be the same as activism of a civilian government. That must be clear. And I also don't believe that shouting and screaming fire and brimstone or misguided hubris is necessarily the only form of activism. I know, and I think my predecessors know, and I'll be lying if I don't say it. The office of the President of the Ghana Bar Association carries its honor, prestige. What should we do with that? Let me give you an example. Say there is something affecting the administration of justice. I know very well that if I seek audience with the Chief Justice, unless there's something beyond his control, he'll definitely grant me audience, especially this current Chief Justice. I should be able to go and see him, discuss the matter, because ultimately we want to achieve success. It would not be proper for me to issue a statement condemning the Chief Justice and those in charge of administration of justice when I can go and see him and pick something. And I'm fortified by this. The most pernicious or dangerous conflict we've had in the Fourth Republic has been the Durban crisis. It was resolved through dialogue. So maybe, just maybe, we should start looking at activism in the context of achieving reform, not necessarily fighting. There's an account proverb that nobody gets drowned in hot water. So this thing that, in the days of the revolution, any form of dialogue will be closed. Any form of mediation, the channels will be closed. So the only form of activism was statements, demonstrations. But in the democracy, let's look at another form. Since I took office, I've led the National Executive Committee of the Bar to pay a courtesy call on the Chief of Defence Staff, the Inspector General of Police. We have a request to the Council of State, and the Chairman has assured me. All trying to open the channels of communication so that certain matters can be dealt with. So for me, I believe strongly that even the President of the Republic, if the bar requests for audience, I know his schedule will be very difficult. We can engage him because since Justice Amegache's time as president, we've always had this annual program where we pay a courtesy call on the president to discuss matters. I think it was December 8th, or when I took office in December, we paid a courtesy call on the whole neck with some former past presidents to discuss these matters because dialogue can achieve better reforms. If you look back, using the Durban crisis as, say, precedent, did anybody believe that issues like the burial of Yana Mahmoud Abdullahi, the burial of Yana Yakubu Andani, the enskinment of another Andani as the Yana, these matters could be resolved. But the three eminent chiefs engaged for almost about a decade. Eventually, it was dialogue, not through war. Now there's peace in that one. But you know what we did? When the issue was resolved, we brought it down into the realm of politics. You get the point? So I think that if maybe we started something as dialogue as a form of activism, our politicians will be able to engage in dialogue instead of fighting over election of speakers and picking ballot boxes and everything. The political climate may be calmer. The decibel levels may be lower. So for me, I don't believe that activism is just issue statements and condemning. When there are channels of communication, I believe that if I ask for opportunity to meet anybody, unless it's very, it would be unusual for.
So as far as you're concerned, this sustained accusation that the GBA has abandoned its role publicly is misplaced, or is born out of a misunderstanding of the era that we are in.
Absolutely. And Samson, let's also look at another aspect tied in. Look, our peculiar history has it that the military government metamorphosed into a political party. And just like in corporate takeover, the agreement can include taking over the liabilities and assets. And then the chairman of the military government, for the decade that it was in power, also became our first president. So, the sort of like the linking the NDC versus PNDC becomes something semantics and metaphysics. So it carried over. So what you get is that if you were to ask most NDC people, since President Mills took office, whether the bar has treated them differently from an NPP government. You get the point? So if you look at it psychologically, the clear break for civilian rule started with in 2001 when President Kufuor took over. Because President Rawlings was our head of state during the military government, and he became our first president. So all the criticisms of his government, his style, carried over. That is why people will say that. But you have to understand that if you look at from 2001, with this accusation started in President Kufuor's era. But we forget that in democracies, institutions become a bit more stronger and people start behaving properly within the confines of the Constitution as the years go by. Those of us who were old enough to have voted in 2000, including you, how many people didn't even believe that there will be no peaceful transition? So I think that when there was a peaceful transition, people actually had this root Damascus Convention that our constitutional process is not some 9-day one that has come to stay. President Kufuor came, we had a criticism. When President President Mills came after President Kufuor, did the bar single him out? When President Mahama came after President Mills, the bar did not single him out.
That's the accusation, that you used to have press statements particularly, and also having your representatives speaking against some of the bad governance issues. But people say we don't see that as much.
Samson, let me give you an example. In 2001, the late J. Bokashi was the bar president. When President Kufuor decided that his government was joining the HIPIC initiative, the next time we saw the headline, GBA condemns government decision to join HIPIC. And there was fireworks at Sumane. Because the argument at the bar was that, look, this is a political decision which a government can take. It doesn't infringe any constitutional provision. It's for the electorate to make a decision whether that decision was right. So I think that started governing us. The things that divide us or are topical these days are primarily political matters. So for example, a government wants to implement the free SHS. Somebody says that it's a drain on the national purse. The GBA will not come in. Everybody can come in. 2, there are competing claims now, because now we have a lot of CSOs. They don't have the limits that we have. They can make comments on politics, on governance, on the whole. But there's something anybody's forgotten. The only time the GBA condemned a minister of state for actions that we thought was wrong is maybe Howard Concern. When she pulled a gun in the bar condemned it. But you know one significant thing that I found out? When the statement went, I signed after Mr. Folsom, and my sister, Mrs. Jacobo, the national PR at that time, worked on a draft. We sent the item out, and we monitored, and it was not really topical in most news studios, because we don't control the editorial policy of media houses. That's a problem, so nobody heard that. And then 2019, just before we went to Takrady, Mr. Folsom called me that Mr. Eduasari, the former MP for Adenta, had called that President Mahama was meeting stakeholders. I think they wanted to look at policy for their manifesto. And the only time we could find for them was after the conference. When we returned from Takrady, the whole NEC met the NDC. That was the day that the students went on that demonstration. And the General Secretary accused us, and we pulled it out. So when Ms. Hawa Kumsin was being vetted for her current, I realized that now Mr. Haruna Idrisu was questioning her about the bar statement. So I don't see, that is the only time. And you know, on the side, the only bar president who has become a cabinet minister has been an NDC in the government, Neil Samuels. So the idea that the bar, it's pro-MPP, no, why we've condemned Ms. Hawa Kumsin. And for the records, I've not seen in the Fourth Republic any NDC Minister of State being singled out. But naturally, we have to admit something, whether we like it or not. Aside its imperfections, I made that statement on my Matthias Day speech, that an imperfect democracy that gives the electorate the opportunity to change or extend the mandate of a government is far better than any form of military adventurism. This program, in some years, I would not have even dared show that. I always tell people that my father was National Secretary during the Revolutionary era, and my uncle was a lawyer. And I remember when they attended bar conferences, my grandmother was praying in tongues all the time because two of his sons are over. Now, becoming bar president is something that we wear on our sleeves. But now things have changed. We've had both NDC and NDC governments. And let's be fair, it's not been perfect, or they could have done better than what. But the days people could just be pulled out, beaten, tortured, slapped, a court system like the public tribunal that did not have the constitutional guaranteed rights in that part of its procedure. Those days are over. So naturally, there's less for us to deal with because 30 years now, we may not have reached the level that we are.
There have been concerns that there are situations that the bar is the one that has the, if you call it the expertise or whatever it is, to comment on such matters happening within the court or within the judiciary, and the public will say they don't hear the bar speaking on those matters as much. Judgments that people feel, are a travesty. They don't hear you speak about them.
Something. You see, the problem is that the bar is not going to validate anybody's position. For me, I don't think the GBA should be commenting as an association on judgments that are delivered by courts after a trial. That is an intellectual discussion for lawyers to have. For example, one of the criticisms that we had recently was when during the election petition, when there was this application that because of the peculiar constitutional importance of the EC, in spite of the decision by counsel for the EC that they were not going to give evidence, they still must go. And the Supreme Court ruled that that was not it. People had their problems, but something, something. At times, people do the wrong thing, they expect the bar to validate it for them. What were we seeing with the election petition? You had NDC and MPP now having lawyers who, I never knew that some lawyers went to school and they do communication, post-communication. And I always find amazing how they stood there like drug dealers with their heavies, explaining their position. And it was partisan. The bar should make a statement for one person to say that the bar has done that. So judgments, for me, when the court delivers judgment, is it a court of first instance? Let the lawyers appeal. For example, people were complaining about Oliver Baka-Vomawo's issue. You have lawyers. Lawyers can go, if a court of magistrates court refuses bail, after this, now that we have this Martin Pebu decision where
weekend courts.
You can even have bail.
Court sit on a Sunday, even on a Sunday.
Yes, and the person has a lawyer. And the lawyers decided to do a media round. You don't get a GBA getting involved in this because lawyers must be able to say, look, let's use the system. So, Samson, the Opuni case, the lawyers are saying that Justice Hoyeniga is presiding over an injustice. That is not for the GBA to get involved. So we cannot validate people's positions for them. Now, something. That is one thing that we have to make clear. And I'll give you another scenario. There's a peculiar problem that we have with our current president. Well, listen, our current president, before he entered politics, was the president of the Greater Accra Bar, president of the Greater Accra Bar.
That's right.
My first
Frank
bar
Davis, yeah.
No, I mean,
sorry.
His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo.
Yes, okay, sorry.
When I was called to the bar in 95, he was the Greater Accra Bar president. Our first conference in 96, he hosted. In 1995, he contested the national president of the bar. I think he was prevailed upon because he had been the parliamentary candidate for the election that the MPP boycotted. He was Secretary General of the African Bar Association. Then he became Attorney General. When he became Attorney General, he was the first Attorney General to pay for all state attorneys to attend. At that time, there was something very cynical. Paul Edujamfi and W. Obuafu were engaged in a very fierce contest to become bar president. I was very much involved in the Edujamfi campaign. And those of us in the Edujamfi campaign were even accusing him that he had brought the state attorney specifically to vote for W. Obuafu, because there was this impression that he was supporting W. Obuafu.
That was the motivation for paying for them to attend the conference.
But it has stayed today. He was the first Attorney General to do that. And in 2001, he was the first Attorney General to spend the whole conference period with us. And then he followed that when he became Minister for Foreign Affairs. The opening ceremony, you would see him. When he was flag bearer, every opening ceremony, you see him. Since 2017, he has attended every opening ceremony. He's confirmed he's coming to Ho when we get to Ho on 12 September. So naturally, he has done his job as a bar member in government, in opposition as president. And I believe strongly that I will not be surprised when he exits office after 7th January 2025 that you see His Excellency at the opening ceremony. So because of that, people think that we are treating him with case glass. No. If there's an infraction, as I said, it was his government that a minister of state pulled a gun, and we found us untoward. Ayawaso by-election, we condemned them. This parliamentary speakers thing, we condemned them. Now, somebody brought a comparison between Kennedy Japan's attack on the judges and Honorable Muntaka's issue that we condemned. When Honorable Kennedy Japan made a statement, the next time we heard, it was a subject matter of contempt proceedings. Something you and I know. That's Law 101. We cannot comment on
ongoing proceedings.
So the reason why we asked Honorable Muntaka to do that, and you know what happened? When we issued the statement, Honorable Sam Jatta George and some partisan lawyers took us to cleaners. He called us a bunch of drunks on social media. Only for Honorable Muntaka to come and apologize and withdraw his comments some days after. And all the people who were condemning us did not come to withdraw. But something, one of the things that we also have to understand is that some of our colleagues have put their political parties' membership ahead of their members of the bar. I believe that almost every lawyer may have a political party of preference. But something, as a young lawyer, I went to court in 2001 and I saw Honorable Cletus Avuka and Kwamina Fusu, I think Avuka was Minister for the Interior or something during the Lawrence era, and Kwamina Fusu Central, arguing a case in the circuit court. It taught me a lesson that no matter our partisan considerations, our fundamental fidelity must be this greatest profession that we've had since God created. Unfortunately, these days, some of our colleagues think that their membership of MPP or NDC is far more important than their fidelity to the profession. So they're the ones who betray us, you know, and something.
There are clearly members who are disgruntled, and that's why you have seen in the media a splinter bar association or bar group, lawyers group.
Something. Let me tell you something. If you are a member of a political party, don't add your profession to it. And don't add, because you know, when we stand in court, for example, if I'm MPP and an NDC person's human rights is being infringed, as a lawyer, I have an obligation to defend the person. But you know, if you become too partisan, in a country like Ghana where we are so divided, if an NDC member maybe is a subject matter of, say, security agency, because you have become so partisan, because what the foot soldiers do, we should not do. So one thing that I would always say is that, look, our colleagues must understand that they are being MPP, they are being NDC, should be subject to being a profession. Because something, when we take the oath, there is nowhere it says that I, our champion, for a qualified applicant of the MPP or the NDC. No. You get the point. And political parties will come and go. We hope the Fourth Republic is the last political party. But even there may be another force come. We don't know history. Did anybody think, those who are alive in 57 think that the CPP will become an electric shock party now? You get the point. So, so the point is that we've seen all these things come and go. Kwame Nkrumah's parties now, some party, even if
in the media, it's been asked if you don't feel threatened as an association that there's a splinter group.
Oh, something. Freedom of association. You know, freedom of association. Now, I'll tell you something. Freedom of association means that people can join. But something. You know, one of the things I always tell people that stay in and fight. Why do people think that bar leaders have the answer to everything? When I was a junior lawyer, I used to give senior Samukujetu hell at bar conferences because at that time I felt that there were certain things that would do. But I did not form another association. I did not stay out. I stayed in. By God's grace, my colleagues have elected me president so that the things that I believe I can be able to do. Something, since I was called to the bar, we missed only one bar conference in 97 at home. From 96 to 2021, I always find time to be there and I make my case. So for me, if there's a problem with the bar, and the bar is a human institution,
right?
You don't stay outside because you see what bothered me was when this whole thing came up, an association to rival the GBA. No, we are not. Nobody can rival us. And today we don't even know their
status.
We don't even know their leaders. You know. So the point is that we have nobody rivaling us. Something. And I'm telling you today that now that we process licenses for on behalf of the GLC, and now we're going to have the mandate to organize the CLEs because it's composed under LI 242.
Continuing legal education.
Yes,
CLEs.
this is not the time for anybody to say that I'm leaving the GBA. The GBA is not Okudjeto's property. It's not Megache's property. It's not Forson's property. Because I don't think that any bar president can write to this will, I devise and bequeath the GBA to my children or for my nephews forever. You get the point. But
right.
the most important thing is that it's for all of us. So I would welcome our colleagues that listen, come to us. Let us know that these are the problems. Something, you know, when I was going around at campaigning, it was a junior lawyer, Mike Lakpabila at AB and David, who drew my attention to the possible effects on AFC after on our legal practice. And when we paid a courtesy call on the Minister for Trade. We've asked to meet Professor Kurok. I think he's been very busy. So that we look at how to see whether there may be some moratorium before we are on the protocol of services, you know, before the Nigerians and the South Africans come to move us out. So we are open. Let people come and talk to us. But this idea
that's important for lawyers, and I know there are many lawyers who are tuned in and watching this show. So what is it that the GBA is doing to protect its members in this regard of the after where we are hosting and the possibility that big firms, you know, giant firms from Nigeria and elsewhere may infiltrate and take our daily bread?
As I'm saying that now we have engaged the Trade Ministry and Professor Kurok. We're going to put together a team. But there's something that I hope I'm able to achieve before I leave office. But I hope that we can start something. I believe strongly that the GBA should take steps to make Accra the dispute settlement capital of Africa. And I'll tell you something. We should argue, lobby, get governments to see the need of having the dispute settlement chamber cited. After
you have gotten the secretariat for the after, you want that in addition?
There's no rule of we've checked. There's no rule of diplomatic that we cannot have it. We can have it. We should have it, because you see, we should tell our story properly. Nigeria is too chaotic for to host a thing. We should tell our story. You know something. But aside that, I believe strongly that under the Alternative Dispute Resolution Act, the government is supposed to set up an arbitration center, which is not done. We can start little. Let us make sure the government sets it up, and then we can have a rule. Let's start with little. Say any agreement of say $10 million now, the seat must be in Accra. You get the point. So that we can, the bigger ones, 300, 400 million, we can leave them in.
How does that take away the scare of the infiltration that may cost your jobs?
No, something. So what I'm trying to say is that when we do that, you and I know very well that when people are paying legal fees, they look at the cost. I think that if you have an arbitration center in Accra, seated in Accra, a dispute settlement
for the purposes of the after
seated in Accra, it stands to reason that somebody will instruct an Accra-based lawyer it's most likely than bringing somebody from outside the country where the hotel bills and everything. How do we lose our job? Because at times some of these agreements that are being performed here, the seat is in London, the seat is in Dubai. So clearly the client will go and get your slaughter in me or somebody like...
Well, I'm sure that lawyers who are watching are excited that you want the GBA to lead and make a case for the dispute settlement, center for AFTA to be here in Accra for the purposes that it will serve. You are here on the law. This is your legal light. It is your help law. And our guest this afternoon is Yao Echampong Boafo, President of the Ghana Bar Association. Very shortly, we'll open the phone lines for you. But you say you came in and you fought internally without getting public when it is not necessary. You believe in dialogue and you believe in staying in to make the reforms that are required. One of the biggest reforms that have attracted public discussion over time has been the recurrent and currently relevant debate on reform of legal education relative to the demand for expansion of access to the Ghana School of Law. It's also culminated into some private member bills for the reconstitution of the General Legal Council, which some believe it's become odious, it's not needed. Where do you stand on this subject? When will this annual ritual end? Particularly that the GBA, you are on the General Legal Council.
Something. Does reform mean everybody must be a lawyer? That's a fundamental question. What is the reform that we are seeking? Has the GLC created a problem that it has to fix? The GLC is being blamed for a problem it didn't create. Why aren't we asking the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission the role it's played in this? And the University of Science and Technology, your alma mater when it comes to law. Let me tell you something. The problem is not the GLC. Now the GLC has 5 campuses. Come on. If instead only had the Makola campus, then we could have said that the GLC is closing shop. The Director of Legal Education keeps on saying that the GLC is not there to restrict numbers. Access. But something. I want put this challenge to all media people. Use your RTR request and ask the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission to pull out the inspection reports the GLC did with them and whether they've acted on. I think that the student to staff SSR is 25-1 or something. There was a year when CJ Akufu was then our National Secretary, so around 19 or something. We did an inspection with them because we were very worried. Central University was doing 66-1. CAF and all those institutions were way over. Now, our premier university, University of Ghana, has a law faculty for over 60 years. It does not mentor any institution. It has no part-time law. It doesn't admit more than 250 students or some, I think 100 here, 150 here. Okay. Now, KNUST comes on board. KNUST started as a science institution, isn't it? Don't we need pharmacists? Don't we need architects? Don't we need them? But KNUST does not mentor any institution to train pharmacists, to train engineers, to train your thing. But KNUST seems to mentor campuses all across the country when it comes to law. I think it's a kick in the groin by that institution. And then, the rules say that I think you must have senior lecturers with research masters, minimum associate professors or something. I may not get this thing right, but I know currently we have a Tuguba and a Tia at Legon, Senyeja and Aporin Cancer at KNUST, Bunzi Simpson at Cape Coast, my brother Kofi Abuchi.
KNUST, you omit NSO Suda.
I'm not a professor, associate professor yet.
Okay.
And then you have Kofi
Abuchi. He's a PhD.
No, I'm not talking about PhD, I'm talking about professors.
Okay, right. Mm.
These are at least the ones that I know that are in the system. How many senior lecturers with at least research masters do we have? I think Mr. Menuvo and I looked at something. One of the institutions, because I don't have it, the report, I've not seen the report. We actually went there in the shock of our life. The dean was a professor of governance. The GTech has just allowed things to go. And then you have institutions that have the capacity of even our premier universities running evening courses, Saturday courses, part-time this, part-time this. Something. They produce them. I think it's a Presbyterian University that started law about 5 years ago. Now has a Kumasi campus mentored by KNUST and Accra campus by University of Cape Coast. There's too much mudding downstream. I'm not saying that we should not accredit institutions, but let the law be done. There's one accreditation that is pending that I will support. The Simon Dumbo University in Upper West sent a proposal to the GLC informing us that the statute that sets up the university requires that they train people in law, and that there is no faculty in the whole northern part of it. And they have brought that. This is something like for a good case for that. But in as much, and I personally will support that. But the point is that we should make sure that all these institutions studying the LLB, their faculties don't breach mandatory statutory requirements. So if the GTEC does its work properly, we may not even do the entrance examination. But we have a situation where everybody has left the GTEC. And I know very well that there are powerful interests. There are a lot of media men.
So this is clearly a problem, not a problem without a solution. It's a question of demand and supply. And there are many people who want to be lawyers. And so if they hear that there's a law faculty here, they just jump on and they get there. What people are concerned about is that they pass, they get qualified, and they are supposed to now do the professional course, which will entitle them to become lawyers, without which they will not be lawyers. And that is where the problem is. We are, I don't know to use the word, whether it's sieving or just blocking access.
You're not blocking access.
If you are not blocking access, how do you explain asking students to sign an undertaking which doesn't tell them, so that they don't question, first of all, they don't know what is their pass mark if they sit for the entrance exam. Clearly, that suggests that it is after they have taken the exam that the school determines how many it wants to take. Then it will say this is the cutoff point. Then they can't question or have remarking, among other things. People are really very agitated about that kind of undertaking. What do you say?
So let me tell you something. People make these emotional arguments. Look, the law school has remarking for part 1 and part 2. With the entrance examination, when the results are in, the academic year is about to start. So it stands to reason that even for the law school survivor, the entrance examination should not have the same rules around it as part 1 or part 2. Because in part 1, if you successfully are remarking, there's a mini call for you to do that. Let's put that aside. Now, the question is there a legal right or a constitutional right to examination rules? Every examining body worldwide sets its rules. There is no universal declaration of human rights on examinations. Let's get the thing straight.
The rules must be conscionable.
So what is conscionable? Granting remarking conscionable. If we were to do a comparative study of examination bodies worldwide, are we going to have all of them allowing remarking?
The High Court had previously, held that this is unconscionable. You cannot provide such a prohibition that a student will not have a right to know, to remarking, among others.
And the Court of Appeal has granted stay of execution in relation to that Prince Ganaku judgment. And the appeal is yet to be determined. So now that it's stayed, let's leave it there. But the point that I'm making is that examination bodies worldwide set their own rules. And
But the rules must be fair.
Samson, who determines fairness? Because you also have to look at the corresponding problem in the IEC. I just drew your attention. You have 2,500 students writing an examination. And then I think there's about 900 or 1,000 people pass. This year, the examination will be written 23rd September. The law school has its calendar. Just imagine you have 1,000 remarking scripts. Are we going to say that the law school should hold on till we go through those processes and then have delayed academic? Isn't the academic calendar, shouldn't there be certain...
Engage more hands. That's what the solution is to that problem.
Yeah, but you can only engage more hands after the results have been published. So you see, the problem I'm trying to let you know is that people get very emotional, but I want you to know that we all know very well that a lot of powerful people know something. We are the only profession that gives people the right to change their career later in life. How many people can become doctors after 20 years of becoming lawyers or something? And I think that, yes, that makes our profession special.
Okay,
But
let's
the
take
point
some
is that-
questions, and when they
just
come in,
finish.
you should be able to
Yes,
explain
something.
even further.
And
Yes.
I just feel that the idea that I've just expressed a desire to be a lawyer doesn't mean I have to be a lawyer. When we were kids, all of us wanted to be Concorde pilots or pilots. Our Ghana Airways is collapsed now. So expression of desire does not necessarily mean that there's a corresponding obligation to let your desire come to. People want to study law. There should be no blockade. But that doesn't mean that we should just say that, oh, let's open our arms and then everybody must come.
But there's an obligation on the state to ensure that we have sufficient lawyers, because we simply don't have the lawyers. When you went to the for the bar conference in the upper East region, you were told about the very dire situation there. A whole population in excess of 1 million. How many lawyers? Less than, is it 32 or so are there, or 34? Again, it's just not the best, like people have said. The phone lines have opened now. You can call us and be very brief, straight to your question, to the president of the Ghana Bar Association, Yao Echampong Boafo. He is our guest on the law this afternoon. This is the law. It is your help law. It is your legal light. So call us. Yes, you are explaining further.
Draw attention. Look, we have sat in this country and we've created a one-city economy. 80% of Ghanaian lawyers work in Accra. Look, the 6 new regional capitals that we've created, only Sefiu also has a high court. There's no office of the Attorney General. You know, when people talk about let's produce lawyers and do the statistics, let's come to our particular situation. Accra, 80%, Kumasi about 500, Takrady or something. Where are these lawyers going to work? In the corporate world, in state institutions, all of them have their head offices in Accra. You can only train those lawyers, just like doctors. If you have teaching hospitals listed across the country, then we can train more doctors. So are we training lawyers because the statistics shows that, or to be relevant? Because, for example, today, if I go to Nalerigu as a lawyer, what am I going to do there? There's not even a high court there. There's no office of the Attorney General there. If I go to Damongo. So the point is that the same people who are arguing today, if the government was to move businesses out of Accra, they will complain. So if we decide to create a one-city economy, we can only have a one-city legal profession.
Let's hear from Peter. Peter, you're calling from Kimoda, and also Sandal. You're calling from Tamale. Hello, Peter. Peter, go ahead with your question.
Yes. I want to ask GBA President. Lawyers pay dues. To find out from him, those dues that what benefits do the lawyers get from dues?
Thank you. Thank you. What benefit do lawyers get from the dues that they pay? Sandal, you're calling from Tamale. Let's hear you.
Yes, my question to the president have to do with him saying, hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah, he's saying there is no human rights law as to the exam student right.
There's no universal rule. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to ask, what is the purpose of the exams we have to write before we enter?
Okay, thank you. What's the purpose of the entrance exams? James, you're calling from Cape Coast. Let's hear you.
My question goes to the GBA President. I want to ask him that if he was a state, back then he had the GBA saying that the fact that you have a desire to be a lawyer does not necessarily mean that you become a lawyer. What would he have felt?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll take one more call and then get some answers from him before we take another round of calls. Clifford, you're calling from Koforidua. Let's hear you. Clifford, let's hear you.
Okay.
Clifford, go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Clifford, let's hear you. Okay, I'm sorry. So the very first question from Peter, I deduce that Peter is a lawyer. He is not happy what his dues is being put to.
If Peter is a lawyer, he uses the portal, isn't it?
Yes, he does use the portal.
And the portal, we didn't borrow money from the bank. We used the dues to build the portal. And have you seen what we've done to our secretariat now to make it more modern? You see, the point is, at this year's conference, that discussion will come. The cost of running the bar is no more the days of old when it was part-time. It's now a full-time. We have about 4,000 lawyers now. And this year, we decided that we'll make a presentation to lawyers to see the cost of running the bar. Look at our bar conference. You go there, you have lunch for 5 days, conference material, brochures, and the medical examination. Something, if we were to do a just basic test at URAC, how much does it cost? So it's about, I think...
But we pay for the conference.
That's the point. I'm just saying that I think that the mistake we've made is that we have kept these things without communicating. I raise up my hand that. So this year we decided that on the Wednesday, the 14th, matters affecting the bar, we'll do a presentation of the cost of running the bar so that people get to see that we actually pulling water out of stones to get these things. That
you must have a lot of money for the work you have done at the bar center, the renovation, complete makeover that you have done there. If you haven't gone to pick any money from any bank, but it's just our dues, then you have done a good job there.
Because we all do this without getting paid. That's why.
James is not happy that you say that you can desire to become a lawyer, but that doesn't mean you become a lawyer. He's not happy.
It's not just law. Something. Desire, a mere desire does not create a corresponding obligation to do anything for somebody to do. You must work at it. I can desire to be a doctor, but it means I have to go to school, pass, and get into any of our medical schools. I can desire to be an engineer. So desire alone does not mean that automatically you're going to get there. Something. If we decide everything, I'll be driving a Rolls Royce now.
But here you are in excess of 2,000 or so students who have gone through the process and seeking access, knocking on the doors of the school to get the professional certificate, can't get it.
Something. That's what I asked an initial question. All those who scream reform, are they saying that reform means everybody must go to law school? So that today, if the numbers increase to say 30,000, the GLC must clearly find the numbers. Have you realized that there's a human resource requirement? Law school.
You don't support the view that the faculties should be allowed to run the professional course and the GLC just take care of, the call to the bar, the exam to the call to the bar?
Absolutely not. I don't believe strongly. I believe strongly that the law school can be taught by practicing lawyers. I'm not saying that academics cannot do that, but I think that for civil procedure, we need people who work with the rules on a day-to-day basis to impart knowledge. Criminal procedure, Office of the Attorney General, those who draft indictments. I'm not saying that academics cannot do that, but something. But
there's a clear difference. I support you on that. There's a difference between the theory and the practice.
Another thing that I want to draw people's attention. Listen, we just started this program, the prelude of duties to the profession, to the public,
to the court and to the clients.
And this is one thing that our profession is the only profession where intellectual prowess is not the only thing that we require. Ethics, sartorial elegance, all these things are part of our profession. Can we impart ethics in students, imbibe it, sartorial elegance, the rules, if we don't have them on campuses? This idea that we should leave them to write the examination.
I hear there are some people screaming at the back. They want to be able to ask a question or two. So let's try and take just at least maybe 2 questions or 3. We may be able to take about 3 questions. But Sandol had asked, what's the purpose of the entrance exams if you won't even show people what the pass mark is and so on?
What has been the pass mark of the entrance examination from the days of old? Let me tell you something. The entrance examination, anybody should tell me the pass mark. This magical 50 was what happened in, is it 2019 or is it 2018 or 19 when they had the 124 students?
That's right. Nobody
Added or decreased it. And then Justice Doche went before Parliament and said the CJ said that if anybody gets 50, so it was used in the last 2 years. But the point is, in the days of old, I've sat in GLC meetings as regional president representative, where people who had 58, 59 did not get into law school. So, the funny thing is that people think that not having a pass mark, it's even going to decrease the numbers. For example, if we had no published pass mark, the 124 students clearly would have been more than that. So for me, the IEC has set its rules. And the IEC's rules is that...
Okay,
it would.
Lawrence, you're calling from Adenta. Hi, Lawrence. Hello, Lawrence. Lawrence, go ahead and speak. Be very fast about this.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Yes, let's hear you,
good
Lawrence.
Afternoon. Yes, my question to the GBA. Yes, good afternoon.
Lawrence, go ahead. We are listening to you. Hello, Ajua, you're calling us from the Eastern region. Let's hear you.
Good afternoon, Samson.
Good afternoon.
Yes. Hello.
Ajua, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I want to say that, yes, he was talking about desires. It's not all desires that are being fulfilled. I just had a professional program for 1 week. And that program, even if I don't practice officially, it is going to help me in the course of the work I do. So we are not asking for much. We also want to get the professional training so that we can use this at our different institutions and establishments that we work in to improve the society. That is all some of us are asking for.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I take that to be a contribution. Time just running out on us. So you are going to, is it Ho this year for the annual bar conference? What's at stake? People ask, is it really necessary? Every year you're going around the country.
Well, it is very necessary. We have to meet. The Bible even says we should not forsake the fellowship of the believers. We have to meet every year, recharge ourselves, exchange ideas, put ourselves out there. For example, when I became president, I sent a Christmas message out so that people will see what we have planned. We want people to know these things. Also, it also helps the local economy. You know, when we were in a conference that I would always remember, not because I won an election, but look at how the Boga, Apanga Lapteg will support me on this one. How the local economy, of course, the price of a confirm went beyond thing, but at least the local economy grew. And what we have done is that, you know, Mr. Forson's era, we have a 10-year cycle. So within a decade, every region, and I think Boga's capability of producing that beautiful conference means that regions that have never held it, like WA in 2025, we're going to Upper West. And the last time we went to WA, they were even looking at Jirapa, Dubai, you know. So people are working hard. Cape Coast has started because we'll be going to Cape Coast in 2023. So as for the conference, we need it.
Yes.
We need to meet.
So what's at stake in Ho?
The topic this year is our Fourth Republic democratic experience, consolidation, gains and prospects. And our former Commissioner Charge, Commissioner Emil Francis Short, is delivering the keynote, the conference theme. Right. His Excellency the President will deliver the keynote address at the opening ceremony. And then, you know, this year there's innovation. As I said, that people are bringing the innovation now. The conference planning committee and the local LOC
organizing committee.
And on the Monday afternoon, they are doing this legal outreach for second cycles, market women, and who. I
understand that some of it will even be on the media, on radio stations.
Yes, I mean,
free legal services.
Yes, absolutely. So all of us and everybody who wants to offer, you join them. And something also is also, you know, it's not every lawyer who can also afford to go to Bahamas or some exotic place like that. That's also an opportunity for us to see ourselves, relax. You know, our conference can be a bit more relaxing, and also domestic tourism, because on Thursday we're spending the whole day going around, and the voter bar, just like what the Upper East Bar did with the Samini. That I hear they are trying to get Edem Stoneboy like those from. So it's going to be exciting. I expect everybody to come, but at least what we've started now is that you can join virtual if you cannot be in whole physical.
Right. Thank you very much. Time is up. Thank you so very much indeed, Yao. Echampong Guafo is the president of the Ghana Bar Association, and he has been our guest this afternoon. This is The Law. It's your legal light. It's your help law. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. Next week, God willing, join us again for another time of good education.